All right, I think most attendees are here by now, so let's get started. What we will do is kick off this webinar with a short animation video on data scrambling, and then we will proceed with our live event. Enjoy the video.
Your Oracle HCM system is full of sensitive and confidential information about your employees. Typically, that confidential data will end up in your non-production instances when you refresh your environments, meaning people working in those non-production environments may be able to access all that real-world information. Instead of heavily controlling security access or creating dummy data, Epicenter's Data Scrambling as a Service automatically scrambles employee details, replacing it with realistic alternatives. Data that looks real but isn't identifiable. Our service lets you scramble every data point, not just personal identifiable info. And you can use our pre-configured set of scrambling rules or define your own. This service is available on demand through a pay-as-you-scramble subscription model and can be scheduled as part of your regular environment refresh. Get in touch to find out more.
So good day, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed the animation video, and thank you for taking part in our Data Scrambling as a Service live webinar today. My name is Ilaria Frigo, and I'm a sales and marketing consultant here at Epicenter, and today I will moderate this webinar. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to explain a few things on how this session will be led. Firstly, we will be recording this webinar, and we will send you the link to the recording after the webinar for future reference. Of course, feel free to share it with your colleagues who may also be interested in this topic but were unable to join us today. All audio and video functions for participants are locked. So please, if you have any questions, use the Q&A functionality to jot down your queries. We will cover these at the end of the presentation. We prepared a few slides in support of the presentation. If you are on a mobile device, then you can easily zoom in to view slides in more detail. Lastly, the duration of this webinar is about 25 minutes, followed by a brief Q&A. With that, I will now hand over to our presenter, David Doherty, partner at Epicenter, who has an extensive experience in the area of HR transformation and HR technology, and today is going to explain all about Epicenter's Data Scrambling as a Service.
Thank you, Ilaria, for the lovely introduction. And hello, and thank you to everybody that's come and joined us today. Much appreciate you all taking a bit of time out of your diary. So extending my own personal welcome to you all. And I myself am very happy and very pleased to be here today to host this webinar. So to introduce myself a little further, my name is David Doherty, as Ilaria said, one of the partners here at Epicenter. I'm here in London, England right now. And yeah, I have a background, very long background. I might not look like it, but I have a background of more than 16 years in HR technology. And the last 8 of those have been very focused on Oracle HCM Cloud. Now, in those 8 years, working on and leading Oracle HCM Cloud projects around the world, data scrambling is a topic that has frustrated me again and again. And I've never been able to find a great solution for that until now. So as a result, I and the whole team here at Epicenter are really excited to bring a fantastic solution that can benefit you and indeed the whole Oracle HCM Cloud community. So I'm so excited to share this with you that it's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in London. And instead of being in the pub, I'm here talking to you about this. That's how much I'm excited by it. Now, before I continue, I should just say I have a bit of a cough at the moment. There's a very real risk that I will have to start coughing at some point during this webinar. I hope not, but if I do, just don't mind me while I go on mute for 10 seconds. So with that, I'm going to reshare my screen and then I'm going to walk you through the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So let's do that. All right, so that should be nice and shared on the screen. So our agenda today, we are going to look at the data scrambling challenge first of all. So why is it so hard to scramble data in Oracle HCM Cloud right now? Then, of course, we're going to look at the Epicenter solution. So what is it that we at Epicenter bring to this problem that will make that problem go away for you all? What are the benefits of that solution you will realize if you implement it? And then, hey, you're going to want to know exactly how you're going to be able to get on board with this solution. What is it that we do and what is it that we require from you? I can tell you now, it's not very much. Then at the end, for those of us who are on Zoom, we will be able to take a couple of questions as well. As Ilaria said, we don't expect this to take much more than 25 minutes, so we hope to be done a little after 1:30. Now, before I get to the main topic, I'm aware that some of you joining us today may not be completely 100% familiar with Epicenter and what we do. So for all of you guys, I will give a very brief introduction as to who we are first of all. Now, here at Epicenter, we live and breathe Oracle HCM Cloud data. And today I also cough Oracle HCM Cloud data. Apologies for that. Now, everything we do is geared towards helping you manage your Oracle HCM data, manage how that data transfers around your HR system landscape and your enterprise system landscape, and we help you extract the maximum value from it. So that all sounds very nice, but what does that mean in reality? Well, what that entails is this. It's a suite of interconnected solutions that are all related to data. So we are best known for our integrations, and we are well renowned as the specialists in integrating Oracle with all of your downstream systems. However, our service offering has evolved over time to become a more all-encompassing suite of HR data management services. Now, all of our service offerings you can see on the categories around the wheel. I'm not going to go into those in all detail, but you can certainly see the themes that are developing around those with integration, data migration, and so on. Now, each one of our service offerings can be broken down into two key elements. The first of those is a next generation unique market-leading technology that we call our flexible interface tool for cloud, or Fit for Cloud for short. And that's what you can see at the center of the wheel. And now we pair that technology then with an end-to-end service that can remove the burden from you as Oracle HCM Cloud users and allow you to focus very much on doing what you do best, which is dealing with your HR processes and looking after your people and looking after your data. Now, there is a whole webinar on each of these topics. We've done them before. We will do them again in the future. But for today, our focus, of course, is on your friend of mine, data scrambling. And I'm going to start with talking about the data scrambling challenge that we face in the Oracle HCM world today. So I could talk to you all evening very happily about why data scrambling is important. However, for those of you here today, I think you probably already understand the reason why, which is probably why you've joined our webinar. So I don't need to go over that in much detail, but just suffice to say, as the video at the start of the webinar said, you have a lot of sensitive data in your HR systems. And as a result, in your non-production environments, it is going to be beneficial for you to protect that data. But whilst we know that data scrambling is an important requirement for Oracle HCM Cloud customers, particularly in a post-GDPR world where data privacy is a much bigger conversation topic than ever before, we see a real gap between that requirement and the viability of the available solutions out there in the market today. So as I mentioned in my intro, in my 8 years working with Oracle HCM Cloud since one of the very early versions in 2013, it's a topic that's impacted some of those projects that I've been working on in the past. And here at Epicenter, all of my colleagues here, we've seen all sorts of different ways of doing this in our collective Oracle HCM implementation experience. So I'm just going to talk you through a couple of those right now, and maybe we can start to identify some of the problems with those as we go along. The first one is the Oracle Data Scrambling license itself. So this is an optional part of the Oracle HCM Cloud product suite. It works fantastically well for what it does, but this only covers what Oracle define as personally identifiable information. So that covers a limited number of the data fields in your Oracle HCM solution. Now, this can meet many requirements. However, it doesn't always be sufficient for what the customer wants. So for example, if I know that there's one person who's the HR director, I don't need to find their scrambled name to go and be able to go and see their unscrambled salary, unscrambled performance rating, etc. So because that's not always sufficient, then the customer looks and explores for other options. And some of these may well be familiar to you. First one of these is custom scrambling programs. So We know of many Oracle HCM customers that spend a lot of time and frankly, a lot of money developing their own custom scrambling routines. This takes a very long time for development. It's expensive, it's inefficient, requires a lot of maintenance, etc. To be perfectly honest, it's a lot of solution and a lot of financial outlay to solve this problem. And it doesn't need to be that way. Also, just something else as well is, where is that data stored? If you're building that custom scrambling program, where are you putting that data? Is it secure? Just a little thought to keep in the back of your mind as we go through this. If that option of the custom scrambling program, if the time and expense is off-putting, then what else can you do? Well, you can go down the manual route. So many companies do this because of that custom route being too expensive or complex. And this involves manually extracting data from Oracle, then manually scrambling, potentially via some kind of complex Excel or via some manual work, then manually building the Oracle HCM loader templates again, the HDL templates, and reloading that data again. Now, this can work. It removes all the long-term complex development, but it's not a very efficient process. It certainly is not repeatable. And potentially that means you have a lot of downtime in your environments every time you want to go through this process. So if you're going through maybe a quarterly refresh, which is very, very common as part of your upgrade cycles, then if you don't want to be repeating this process over and over again. Plus, of course, you may have one or maybe two people that know how this works, and that creates a human risk as well as creating a bottleneck. And again, I'm going to come back to data security, because where is the data being stored during this process? Is that data being stored on a laptop? Is it being emailed around and around the HRIT team? That is certainly not the way you want to manage your data. So if you don't want to build a custom scrambling program and you don't want to go through this manual cumbersome process every time, then what else is there available to you? Well, do nothing. That's what a lot of companies do. And maybe some of you attending today, maybe that's a familiar scenario for you. I don't know. So what happens here is, if you don't do anything with scrambling the data, then you have to take some other measures. So maybe you end up heavily controlling the security in your development environment, basically treating your development environment with the same security procedures as you would your production system. That detracts from your development work. It's a laborious process. It's a lot of administration, etc. Or of course, you can load dummy data. So you can start loading your favorite Disney characters and movie stars into the environment. But when you do that, it tends to be very, very limited, unrealistic data. And that's not really ideal for your testing scenarios. It's not great for your training sessions. And so this isn't really a great solution either. So then what we actually see sometimes is that it just becomes an accepted fact that people will have access to confidential information in those development test systems by people that actually don't need to access that data in order to perform their jobs. It shouldn't be necessary. So even if people have signed all kinds of confidentiality agreements, it's still certainly not aligned to best security practices, principles of GDPR, and other regulations where you may be, California data protection laws, whatever it might be in your part of the world. So hey, here at Epicenter, that's not a situation we were particularly happy to accept. We already have the know-how, the software, and the expertise to manage complex integrations, data migration. We're very used to transforming data and loading it into Oracle HCM Cloud. So the logical answer for us was that we would be the ideal people to do something about it. And this is the end result. So the process of data scrambling, or our Epicenter data scrambling solution, is incredibly simple, very straightforward. So firstly, we have our Oracle HCM Cloud, and we start with our source instance of data. So typically when you're in your normal run mode, this would be your production environment. That's where we'd get the data from. But of course, during a project scenario, maybe you might have a data migration data set, maybe in a different environment. But so we start with that source instance. Through the software and technology that we have, we're able to extract that data from Oracle HCM Cloud, and then we can apply our scrambling rules to that data. Now, these scrambling rules are the key to the whole solution, and these can be a combination of our predefined rules. Now, we have a set of predefined rules for many data points in the Oracle HCM database, and that will take care of the majority of what we would call sort of standard normal requirements. So we can already have rules for scrambling name, address, performance ratings, jobs, departments, whatever it is. Now, on top of that, we may need some level of bespoke rules designed just for you. So for example, if you have some complex validation logic somewhere in your setup, maybe around salary ranges, which is an example I'll come to in a minute. And of course, maybe scrambling flex fields. We're perfectly capable of scrambling flex fields, but of course, those are unique to you. So we'll need to create that rule for you. But the key point here is that this is a very, very flexible and configurable, very, very key configurable. So that makes it very simple. It's a very flexible and configurable solution. And we can even apply different rules to different environments as we go. So we can have a different set of scrambled data with different rules in, say, your development environment versus your training environment, because different groups of people, different needs, maybe you want different scrambling rules. We have that level of flexibility. So after we apply those rules, you then have a very nice scrambled data set. And then what we can do is we generate those standard Oracle HDL loader files with your scrambled data. And this is technology, again, we have out of the box, all ready to go. We can create those loader templates for any field in the Oracle HCM library. Then we can load those scrambled data files into the target instance. And then there you go. You're able to use your scrambled data in that target instance. And I'll come to this. This is going to be a very repeatable process, and I'll come to that when we talk about how we get this solution set up. But the end result here is that you then have scrambled data in a target instance, and that can then be used freely by developers, testers, trainers, without having to worry about data security. Just makes that management of those environments and all the activities you need to do in them much, much easier. Right, so a few examples of what I mean by data scrambling rules. So our fully configurable rules can be applied to any data point, as I mentioned, including flex fields, and are designed to fully respect your Oracle setup. So while some fields in Oracle are set up and Oracle dictates how those are set up, others are set up more uniquely to you. So some data scrambling rules and examples are more straightforward than others. So let me give a couple of examples ranging from the most simple to sort of the more complex. So first one is a performance rating. This is pretty easy. It's a very simple one. You will have a rating scale, whether it's from 1 to 5 or some other scale, and we can just simply apply a random value based on that scale, right? Nice and simple. The second one is national ID. Now, this is a very important data point for protecting your employees' identity. And, certainly in the US, we've got a lot of people from the US on this call today. And, so social security number, if that number gets into the wrong hands, that's not really a great situation for that employee. So it's important that we protect that. Now here, this is a great example of where there's a rule set in Oracle. So that social security number has a very, very fixed format, the number of characters, format, etc. And we basically match our rules to the validation rules that are in Oracle. So we have to set our rule so that when we create a random number, it will respect the format that is set up in Oracle. You can apply that to other data points as well. Then we have something like salary. Now, salary could be as simple as just generating a random number, let's say between $20,000 and $200,000. But what if you have salary ranges? So you may have it set up so that if you're a grade 7 in your organization, your salary must be between $50,000 and $75,000 because that's the rule. So if we just generate a random number, there's a very high chance it's outside of that range. But that's not a problem. So we can configure our rules to work with your salary ranges so that it can respect that setup. So we tweak our predefined templates to match that setup so that the data scrambling rules that we create are then going to work for you and what you need. So what are some of the benefits here? I already mentioned a couple of these, but the first and obvious one is that we can scramble any Oracle HCM data point that you store about your employees. And that, of course, includes flex fields. So this is certainly a huge differentiator between our solution and other solutions available out there currently today. Secondly, is that you can benefit from our library of predefined templates. So we've already got a lot of these set up. As I've said before, some rules may need to be bespoke, in which case we can help you design and create your own, but you've got a great starter already waiting for you out of the box. Then we get to a couple of things that were really important to us when we were designing this solution. The first is that the data is realistic. And this is really important for your testing, for your training. We're not hiding data here. We're not zeroing out everyone's salary. We're making data that's realistic, that follows the configuration rules that you have in place in your Oracle HCM setup. Do you have departments linked to business units? So you need to have that validation between the two. No problem. Salary ranges, I mentioned before, being linked to grades. Again, it's not a problem. It's all there, possible in our configuration rules for whatever setup you have. Our other main objective is we want to make this automated and repeatable. So we don't want you to be wasting time on manually scrambling that data, spending a lot of man hours on building your own solution, or having somebody locked in a basement scrambling data for 3 days every time you refresh your environments. This is, once it's set up, this is a very, very automated, fast process. Literally, we're talking the click of a few buttons here to get to make this happen. And this can be in project mode and as a long-term solution. So we just want you to wave goodbye to all that complexity, wave goodbye to all the long downtime. And we can also provide the files for upload to multiple environments following a refresh as well. So if you want to put one set of scrambled data across 4 different non-production environments, then we can do that very easily. It's such a time saver every time you want to do this. Then the last point, I mentioned security a couple of times when we were talking about some of the current solutions that were available to you. Where is that data being stored? Well, with us, we have a 100% secure guarantee. All of our data resides on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And what else resides on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure? That's right, your Oracle HCM Cloud instance itself. So that data is never leaving the Oracle domain. Never goes anywhere else, doesn't go on any other servers, certainly doesn't sit on ours. The data is always encrypted, meeting all standard practices. It's encrypted at every step of its journey. We don't have spreadsheets sitting on hard drives. We don't have spreadsheets being emailed around staff members. Being automated, this solution also has the impact of limiting the number of eyes on the data. You don't need to have individuals looking at this every time. You're running an automated process. And then lastly, any data files that we do have that are stored in Oracle, but those are all purged according to legal requirements and indeed according to what you want to happen as well, using that legal as a minimum. So those benefits I think are really important. Everything here, I said at the top of the call, everything we do is around managing that data, helping you extract the value from it and taking away the burden from you. And that's what all of the elements of this solution really are aiming to do. So having talked about the data scrambling solution and very high level technically how we do it, I now want to talk about the second aspect of it, which is the service part. So as I've just said, we aim to take away all the hassle for you, make your lives as easy as possible. So basically, anytime you want to scramble your data, this can be scheduled in advance, or it can even be requested on demand via our support desk. And all you need to do in order to get this process kicked off is this. Basically, send us a request. Get in touch with our support desk, send us an email, then we will work with you to confirm the details of that data scrambling process. So what's the date and time you want to do it? Which environment or environments do you want to load scrambled data into? Which templates do you want to apply? Do you want to apply, the full scramble or just scrambling a few basic pieces of information? We get to have those options with you. And then once we've confirmed those details, you can basically sit back and relax. We will schedule the run. And then once it's complete, we'll let you know, and you can go and enjoy your new scrambled data set and get on with the rest of your activities. That's it. That's all we need from you each time you want to run this process. Now, I said, this is an on-demand service. Now, this can either be available, say, as part of an environment refresh. I've already used this example a couple of times during this call. And that's the most common use case, basically. So you're upgrading your Oracle environments on a quarterly basis. At that time, probably doing a set of P2T copies. And that's a great moment in which to scramble the data and get a nice fresh data set into your environment. But of course, we can also do this on an ad hoc basis. So if during project mode, you have a test cycle coming up and you want a fresh batch of scrambled data in there, request it and we can do it. And at all times, this is available on what we call a pay-as-you scramble basis, which means you only pay when you scramble data. So if you don't scramble data for 6 months, you don't make a request to us, you don't pay anything, there's no other costs involved, you purely pay each time you scramble that data. So now you've seen the solution, you've seen the service. I hope that certainly piqued your interest. So how would you get on board? So I'm now going to take you through the steps of how we go about initializing this data scrambling service. So first, we have a setup phase, and it's really important to emphasize this is a one-time exercise to get started. We only ever need to do this once. And how we do it is the following. So firstly, we review the templates we already have. We decide which of those you want to apply. We then also will go through and see which ones where we have any gaps or anything like that. And then we'll go ahead and apply those templates. Then, of course, we'll do a bit of testing. And then once we're ready and we're happy that it's giving us the desired results, we will then move into the execute mode. And in that execute mode, basically it becomes that repeatable on-demand service that you just need to request each time you want to run it. So, this setup, by using our pre-configured templates, this can really take as little as a few weeks. If you have custom requirements, it may take a little longer, of course, but we're certainly not talking about a multi-month or even multi-year project here. We're counting the implementation time in weeks here. That's how quick we can do it, because we've designed this in such a way to make it repeatable, to make it easy to set up and make it easy for you to work with. So we say it's easy for you to work with. So what do we require from you? Well, as much as we'd love to, we can't do this alone, but we do try to keep the burden on your time to a minimum. So we only really need a few things from you in this setup process. First of those is obviously decisions on which data points need to be scrambled. Of course, we can make recommendations, but you need to validate those recommendations and tell us the data points that you wish to be scrambled at the end of the day. We need you to help review our pre-existing templates where we assess the suitability, we identify any gaps in those templates to your Oracle HCM setup, and then you can help us to define any additional requirements if they're needed. To be honest, our pre-configured templates do cover the majority of requirements, but if there's anything else, we use that design phase to do so. Then we go away and set up the solution. And then after that, we just need you to test and validate that the data is being scrambled in the way that you're expecting. And then finally, when it's live, we just need to know when you want to scramble the data, into which environments, etc., and so on. And we will always take care of the rest of that. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm quite passionate about this. We're really excited about this here at Epicenter, and I hope after the last sort of 20 minutes, I hope you are too. So for those of you on Zoom with the possibility to do so, I will open the floor for any questions. So if you're on Zoom, there is a Q&A box, as Ilara mentioned earlier, and I'll start to take any that are already there. So let me just give 30 seconds for that. And also, I think I managed to get through all of that content. I think I've only coughed 2 or 3 times so far, which I think is not bad, considering how much I've been coughing for the last 3 weeks. All right, so as most of you are on LinkedIn, we have a couple of questions starting to come in. All right, excellent. So let me grab the first one. Okay, so is there a data security risk associated to extracting data and scrambling it in your software? No, so I mentioned security, and it's something that's quite important to us. All data, as I said, is hosted in the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and data is encrypted everywhere. It's something we take incredibly seriously with every one of our services. So yeah, we really want to take care of that a lot. So there is no data security risks. It never leaves Oracle. It never needs to go to any other destination. So I'm just going to take one more, I think. Which is, can you scramble organizational data tables such as location? That's an interesting question. So the setup data you have in Oracle, departments, locations, etc. I didn't really mention that, so I will do now. We can do that. We can scramble anything, but we normally recommend not to do so. We really prefer that we keep that organizational structure in place, because then that helps to keep your data realistic, and really generally we don't have any we don't have any sensitive data in there. Your names of your departments, locations, etc., are not really sensitive data. So we don't really need to worry about scrambling those. We just scramble the data that's assigned to employees, where you can identify them and see any sensitive information about them. And I think that will probably do for the questions. So I am just going to do one more slide before I hand you back to Ilaria. So finally, if you like any of what you heard today, and if this piques your interest at all, I just want to tell you how you can get in touch and stay connected with us. So first of all, please follow us on LinkedIn. You may already be doing so, but please, after this webinar, just stay on our profile page, give us a follow, and that will help to keep you up to date with all of the innovation going on here at Epicenter HQ. As I said, we've got a lot of services related to Oracle HCM Cloud, related to Oracle HCM data, integrations, data migration, data scrambling, a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. I'd hate for you to miss any of that good news. We also run events on a fairly regular basis, so you can also sign up for those. Our website, epicenter.eu, you can visit that anytime, and of course you can always drop us an email. Alternatively, if you think of another question about data scrambling, or you want to discuss how our services can work for you, you can also contact me. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where you can message me, and you can follow my posts, and of course you can always see what I used to look like in 2017, as that photo is from. Then you can also email me on the address you see on screen, david.doherty@epicenter.eu. So with that, I'm going to say a very final thank you from me for attending. I appreciate everybody that took time out of their diary. I hope that was worthwhile for you all. I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and I'm going to hand you back to Ilaria to close the webinar. Ilaria, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dave. So this concludes our webinar today. David and I hope you have enjoyed your time with us and were able to take away something valuable. Epicenter hosts these webinars on a regular basis, and if you're interested in learning when our next webinar will take place, please follow us on LinkedIn indeed. Thank you again for your participation, and have a nice weekend ahead.